When God separates you, it's not random, and it's not because of something you chose on your own. It begins with His purpose, not your preference. You see, one of the greatest mistakes we make as believers is assuming that the course of our life is determined by our own decisions. Yes, we make choices, but over and above that, there is a sovereign God directing the steps of His children. And when He has a plan for you, a plan that is different from the people around you, He will make sure you are set apart so He can accomplish that plan in your life. Now, that separation doesn't always feel good. In fact, most of the time it feels uncomfortable, because by nature, we want to belong. We want to be accepted. We want to fit in. But God did not call you to fit in. He called you to stand out. He called you to live for something bigger than the approval of people. And so when He begins to separate you, you might lose some relationships. You might miss out on opportunities that others get. You might find yourself walking a lonely road. And your first thought will be, why is this happening to me? Did I do something wrong? No, you didn't do something wrong. God is doing something right. He is separating you because His purpose for you requires a different path. Think about Abraham. When God called him, what did He say? Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. That's separation. Before Abraham could experience the promise, before he could become the father of many nations, God had to take him out of what was familiar. Why? Because you cannot step into God's future while holding on to everything from your past. God separates because He knows where He's taking you, and He knows you can't get there by staying where you are. And here's something you need to understand. Separation is not about superiority. It's not that you're better than someone else. It's not that you deserve more. No, it's about responsibility. God is entrusting you with something that requires a different level of devotion. That's why He won't let you go with the crowd. That's why He closes certain doors. That's why He removes you from environments that might look good but are not good for you. Because His purpose comes first. And that purpose is bigger than your comfort. It's bigger than your popularity. It's bigger than your plans. So don't fight it. Don't resist it. Don't keep running back to what God is trying to take you out of. Because the more you cling to the old, the longer it will take for God to do what He wants to do in your life. Separation is not punishment. It's positioning. God is positioning you for something greater. And if you could see what He sees, if you could see the future He has prepared, you would understand why He had to set you apart. And maybe right now you're in that season. You feel like you're being pulled away from the people you love, from the places you're comfortable, from the plans you made. It's painful, it's confusing. But listen, God never separates without a reason. There is a purpose behind every move He makes. And one day you'll look back and realize that what felt like loss was actually grace. That what felt like isolation was preparation. And that what felt like the end was really the beginning of everything God wanted for you. So if God is separating you, trust Him. Because when He sets you apart, it's not to leave you empty, it's to fill you with something greater than you could have imagined. And that is why separation begins with God's purpose, not your preference. When God removes something or someone from your life, it's never without purpose. It's never accidental. It's never because He wants to hurt you or take something good away from you. It's because He sees what you cannot see. He knows what lies ahead. He knows what will help you fulfill His calling, and He knows what will hold you back, and out of love He will take away anything that will hinder His plan for your life. Now let's be honest. When God takes something away, our first reaction is to question Him. We say, Lord, why did you allow that relationship to end? Why did you take that job? Why did you close that door? It feels unfair. It feels confusing. But here's the truth. You and I cannot see the whole picture. We are looking at a small piece of the puzzle, but God sees the entire design. And if He removes something, it's because keeping it would have destroyed you, distracted you, or delayed you from becoming who He created you to be. Think about Gideon. Before God could give him victory, he had to reduce his army from 32,000 to 300. Why? Because if Gideon went into battle with that large army, Israel would have taken the credit. They would have believed the victory was their own strength. So God removed what looked like an advantage because it would have hindered His purpose. Sometimes God will do the same with us. He will strip away what you thought you needed, what you thought was essential, because it was going to rob him of his glory and rob you of his best. And here's the part that's hard for us to accept. Sometimes the thing he removes is something good. Sometimes it's a relationship you enjoyed. Sometimes it's a job you loved. Sometimes it's a dream you've carried for years. And you think, why would God take away something good? Because it wasn't leading to his purpose for your life. It might have been good for a season, but not for your destiny. And God is more concerned with your destiny than your comfort. You see, if you hold on to what God is trying to take away, you're going to miss what he's trying to give you. Some of you are praying for open doors, but God is still closing old ones because he knows you can't step into the new while clinging to the old. And the longer you fight him, the longer you delay his plan. So instead of asking, why did you take it? Maybe the better question is, Lord, what are you preparing me for? I want you to remember this. Anything God removes, he replaces with something better, not always something easier, not always something more comfortable, but something better for his glory and for your good. It may not look like it right now. It may feel like loss. It may feel like rejection. But one day you'll understand that God's subtraction was part of his multiplication. He was taking away what would have kept you small so he could give you something that would let you grow. So don't fight his hand when he removes something. Don't cling to what he has already taken away. Trust that if he moved it, it was because it could not go with you where he's taking you. And if you could see what's ahead, you would thank him for every closed door, every ended relationship, everything he stripped away, because it was never meant to destroy you, it was meant to prepare you. And that is why God removes what will hinder your calling. One of the most difficult seasons in the Christian life is when God isolates you, when you feel alone, when the people you used to depend on are no longer there, when the places you used to find comfort don't feel the same, and your heart begins to whisper, maybe God has forgotten me, maybe he doesn't care anymore. But let me tell you something, isolation is not rejection, it's preparation. When God pulls you away from the crowd, it's because he's doing something in you that he cannot do in the noise. You see, we often think God does his greatest work on the platform in the public eye, but the truth is God does his greatest work in the hidden places. Before David ever faced Goliath, he was alone in the fields with his sheep. Before Moses stood before Pharaoh, he spent 40 years in the wilderness. Before Jesus began his ministry, he was led into the desert to be tested. Why? Because isolation is where God shapes you, strengthens you, and prepares you for what's coming next. And yet, it's in those moments of isolation that we are most tempted to doubt. We look around and see everyone else moving forward, everyone else finding success, everyone else surrounded by people, and we think, what's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. God has you exactly where he wants you, because what he's preparing you for cannot be built in a crowd. It has to be built in the quiet where it's just you and him. In isolation, God strips away every distraction. He removes the voices you've been listening to so you can finally hear his voice clearly. He allows you to feel the weight of dependence, so you stop leaning on people and start leaning on him. And yes, that feels uncomfortable. Yes, it feels lonely, but that's where intimacy with God is forged. That's where your roots go deep, because when there's nothing else to hold on to, you learn to hold on to him. You see, isolation is where God develops the kind of character that can sustain the calling he's about to give you. It's where he deals with your pride, your fear, your insecurities. It's where he teaches you obedience when nobody's watching. And if you skip that season, you'll never be ready for what's ahead. That's why some of you feel stuck right now, not because God has abandoned you, but because he's training you. He's building something in you that will last. So instead of saying, Lord, why am I here? Start saying, Lord, what are you teaching me here? Because there are lessons in isolation you cannot learn anywhere else. There is a strength you cannot gain any other way. And when the time is right, God will bring you out of that season. But when he does, you'll be different. You'll be stronger. You'll be ready. Don't confuse isolation with punishment. Don't confuse it with rejection. God is not casting you aside. He is setting you apart. And the very season that feels like your lowest point may be the season where God is doing his deepest work. So if you're in that place right now, take heart. God has not left you. He's preparing you. And when he brings you out, you'll understand that the quiet place was never a prison. It was the classroom where he made you ready for your purpose. And that is why isolation is preparation, not rejection. When God separates you, He doesn't just change your location, He changes you. Because the whole purpose of separation is transformation. God isn't interested in simply moving you from one place to another. He's interested in making you into someone new. And that process doesn't happen overnight. It happens in the quiet, in the moments when you feel cut off, in the seasons when you're stripped of everything you used to rely on. That's where transformation begins. The problem is, most of us want the promise without the process. We want the blessing without the breaking. We want to be used by God without being changed by God. But that's not how it works. God cannot pour new wine into old wineskins. He cannot put His purpose into a life that refuses to be shaped. So when He separates you, it's because He wants to work on you. Not for a day, not for a week, but for as long as it takes to make you ready. Think about Jacob. Before he became Israel, he had to wrestle with God. He had to be stripped of his old identity, his old ways of doing things. He had to come to the end of himself. That's what separation does. It brings you to a place where you can no longer depend on your own strength, your own wisdom, your own plan. It humbles you. And in that humility, God begins to form something new. Sometimes that transformation means letting go of pride. Sometimes it means breaking old habits. Sometimes it means healing wounds you've carried for years. And those things don't happen in a crowd. They don't happen when life is comfortable. They happen when God pulls you away, when He shuts the doors, when He puts you in a place where the only option is to surrender. And let me tell you, surrender is not easy. Everything in us wants to fight it. Everything in us wants to hold on to the old. But until you release what was, you can never embrace what will be. And here's the truth, transformation is never just about you. It's about the people God is going to use you to reach. It's about the generations that will be impacted by your obedience. It's about His glory being revealed through your life. That's why He takes this so seriously. That's why He won't rush the process. Because what He's building in you has eternal weight. And if you could see what He's preparing you for, you would understand why the shaping hurts, why the breaking is necessary, why the separation feels so intense. So don't despise the season you're in. Don't wish it away. Don't say, Lord, just get me out of this. Instead say, Lord, do what you need to do in me. Because the truth is, God cares more about who you're becoming than where you're going. And if He has you in this season, it's because there's something in you He wants to change before He takes you into what's next. And one day when you look back, you'll see that every tear, every lonely night, every closed door was part of God's transforming work in your life. You'll realize He was not punishing you, He was preparing you. And the person who walks out of this season will not be the same person who walked in. And that is why separation always leads to transformation. When God sets you apart, it's because the assignment He has for you demands a different level of obedience. Not the kind of obedience that only works when things are easy, not the kind that lasts when people are watching, but the kind that remains steady when no one else understands why you're doing what you're doing. Because the truth is, your calling will require decisions that don't make sense to the world. It will require sacrifices that other people don't have to make. And it will require a heart that says yes to God even when that yes costs you something. You see, many of us want the blessing of obedience without the cost of obedience. We want to walk in the fullness of our calling but still live like everyone else. It doesn't work that way. God cannot entrust you with something great if you are not willing to obey Him completely. That's why when He calls you, He begins by testing your obedience. Because if you cannot obey Him in the small things, you will never obey Him in the big things. Think about Noah. God told him to build an ark when it had never rained like that before. People mocked him. People laughed at him. It made no sense, but Noah obeyed. Think about Abraham. God told him to leave everything familiar without even telling him where he was going. He obeyed. Obedience always comes before understanding. We want God to explain first, but God says, trust me first. And when you trust Him enough to obey, even when it's hard, even when it costs you, that's when you position yourself for His power to work in your life. Here's what I've learned. Partial obedience is disobedience. Delayed obedience is disobedience. God doesn't call us to negotiate His instructions. He calls us to surrender to them. And the reason He requires that is because your assignment is too important for compromise. If you compromise here, you'll compromise later. If you make excuses now, you'll make excuses when the pressure gets greater. So God is shaping you into someone who obeys without hesitation, someone who trusts His voice more than your own logic. And let me tell you something, obedience will always cost you something. It might cost you relationships, it might cost you opportunities, it might cost you your comfort, but whatever it costs you, it will never cost you more than disobedience. Because the cost of disobedience is always greater than the cost of obedience. When you obey, you may lose something now, but you gain what only God can give. You gain His favor, you gain His blessing, you gain His presence in ways you've never experienced before. This is why God separates you, because He knows the level of obedience your calling requires. He knows you can't live like everyone else and fulfill His plan for your life. He knows you can't hold on to everything and still move forward with Him. So He calls you to a higher standard, a deeper level of trust. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it feels like too much sometimes. But the reward of obedience is always worth it. Always. And one day you'll look back and realize that every act of obedience, every step of faith, every sacrifice was worth it because it positioned you for everything God had planned. You'll see that He never asked you to obey to take something from you. He asked you to obey so He could give you something far greater than you ever imagined. And that is why your assignment requires a different level of obedience. When God separates you, it's never about making you famous. It's never about elevating you for your own glory. It's always about His glory. And this is something we need to understand, because if we think God is setting us apart so we can shine in front of people, we've missed the whole point. God does not share His glory with anyone. Everything He does in your life, every blessing, every breakthrough, every open door is designed to point back to Him. That's why He takes us through these seasons of stripping and shaping. Because as long as we're still trying to build our name, as long as we're still living for people's approval, as long as we're still seeking recognition, we are not ready for what He wants to do. He has to bring us to the place where it's no longer about us, where we can honestly say, Lord, if no one ever knows my name, as long as they know yours, that's enough. That's the heart God is looking for. Look at the story of Joseph. Everything he went through, the betrayal, the prison, the years of waiting, it all led to a moment where God elevated him. But when Joseph finally stood in that position of power, he didn't take the credit. He didn't say, look what I accomplished. He said, it was God who did this. And that's exactly why God trusted him with that position, because He knew Joseph would use it for His glory, not his own. The truth is, if we don't understand this, the blessing will destroy us. If God gives you influence before He breaks your pride, you'll use it to build your kingdom instead of His. If He gives you success before you've surrendered your ego, you'll take the credit instead of giving Him praise. And God loves you too much to let that happen. So He separates you. He hides you. He humbles you. Not to harm you, but to make sure that when He elevates you, your heart is ready to handle it. And here's something else. When it's about His glory, you stop comparing yourself to others. You stop asking, why did they get there before me? Because you realize it's not about you getting there first. It's about God being glorified in His timing and His way. That will free you from so much frustration. That will free you from envy, from insecurity, from striving. Because when your heart is set on His glory, you can say, Lord, as long as You're honored, I'm satisfied. And let me tell you, when you live that way, you become unstoppable. Because nothing can discourage you when your goal is His glory. If people celebrate you, you give Him glory. If they criticize you, you still give Him glory. If doors open, you give Him glory. If doors close, you give Him glory. Because it was never about you in the first place. That's the kind of life that honors God. That's the kind of heart He can trust with influence, with opportunity, with impact. So if God has separated you, don't make it about proving yourself. Don't make it about showing people what you can do. Make it about pointing everything back to Him. Let your life be a stage where His greatness is displayed. Let your story be a testimony that says, this is what God can do. Because at the end of the day, it's not your name that matters. It's His. It's not your kingdom that lasts. It's His. And when you understand that, everything changes. And that is why God's separation is for His glory, not your ego.